Greetings to everyone. Today's topic is about scatter gather component from MuleSoft. I'm Ashish Kumar Pandya, Senior Technical Lead working with MuleSoft Wishworks Consulting Private Limited. Today we are going to talk about scatter gather component in detail. That's like what, why, and how we are going to use scatter gather component in the development of MuleSoft flows. So let's move on to the next slide. So what is scatter gather component? Scatter gather component is being provided by the MuleSoft, and it is an out-of-box component, and it is being used to connect with multiple systems in concurrently and aggregating into a single response. And why we have to use scatter gather component? Initial version of the scatter gather component was in the name of all message router, which used to work in sequential manner. So the problem here lies is if any of the message processor fails in between while running all the messages or sending out the messages to the different systems in sequential manner. So if one fails, the rest of the message processor used to come on to halt, and the response which we were given to the client was not in the right way. So to avoid these circumstances, MuleSoft came up with scatter gather component, which helps in connecting with different machines, different systems, different web services in concurrently and parallelly, and the responses are being collated in a single response and are being catered to the user. So let's move on to the next slide, which is talking about how to use scatter gather component. Let us take a business use case, which is about the logistic rates. If you could see in the current market, we have different logistic vendors available at different rates. And as a user, I would like to see that which has been most feasible for me to take the service and to send out the courier from one distance to another, one location to another location, and what is the cost of that. So I want the best rate from the market. So the scatter gather component will help you in getting all the different responses in a single response, collated and aggregated using the scatter gather component. So let's get into the actual implementation of the scatter gather component. I'm just moving it to the Anypoint Studio. And this is the, if you could see on the screen, this is the Anypoint Studio. And you could see a couple of components being reflecting on the screen. One is the scatter gather component, another is the data view transformer and the merge response. And if you could see on the bottom, there is an, I have taken two vendors. Let's assume that one is RMX response and the UPS response. They have two different rates for a particular distance. So we would calculate it gives the calculated amount or the money for the particular service taken by a consumer. So let's get into detail about the scatter gather component. So I'm just clicking on the scatter gather component. Scatter gather component comes with three different strategies. One is default strategy, another one is the from class. From class is nothing but if you want to customize your aggregation of the responses, you can do it by adding the class from in the Java component. We can implement a Java component, and we have implemented one of the Java component. Let me redirect you, or we can go to the Java class, which is talking about how to aggregate the responses. You can aggregate the responses based on the in the response there are a couple of fields like currency or the country or the currency code or the total amount or the price. So based on the any of the field, you can implement the business logic, and you can collate or you can aggregate the response based on the field coming in the response. That's the one part. So this is the aggregator carrier. So just I'm switching to the flow. So I'm making it bigger. And if you see this category component, the second class is the customized aggregation, and the third one is again the aggregation strategy. But you can place the component, the Java class, into a bean, and you can reference it here by adding it here in the class. It is again the same one, but it is coming from the point of Spring framework and the Spring Bean usage into the flows. So if you are having a background of Spring, it would be very much easy to adapt. And let's click on the another tab, Advanced. In Advanced, again, it has the Spring features, lazy init, and auto wire. Depends on an auto wire candidate. So if you see, if you have any understanding of the Spring, or if you are a Spring developer, you could understand what is lazy initiation. Lazy initiation in the sense you are connecting to any of the Spring Bean, and until unless the request reaches to the Spring Bean, it is not been instantiated. So that is lazy initiation. And if you see, there are two types again in this abstract and the primary. If you are going for primary, it follows the Spring Bean lifecycle: init method, destroy method, factory method, and the factory bean. So you can adapt to any of the one from abstract or primary. It's based on the requirement. So let's click on the third tab, Nodes. In Nodes again is been used for maintaining all the documentation part into it, so that the developer has been switching between the projects. If there are new developers coming in to understand the component, it is very much easy to him. So that's the advantage of the nodes here. So just I'm cancelling it. For this topic, we'll be only using the default strategy for it. And let's get into the further detail the component level. There is advanced again here. If you see on the screen, it is when giving you the timeout, default thread profile, configure thread profile. So it has, if you are concurrently connecting to different systems, we need to maintain the timeout. If any of the system is not coming in within particular timeout, it leaves the responses there itself, and it goes on to the another response, and it aggregates it. So default thread profile, again, it's going to be default thread profile like, see that the thread been provided, the default threads provided by this category component. And the third one is if you want to manually, if you want to configure the threads. So configuring threads, like you can maintain how many threads are been needed in this category component, so that it can parallelly or concurrently it can connect to different systems. So let's assume that you want to maintain 16 threads. So 16 threads in the sense it can connect to 16 different systems in concurrently, and each thread is nothing but each thread is connecting to a one system. So we'll not be configuring it here. We will go for the default one. So it has, based on the configuration available by the default category component, it will help in that area. So let's go back to the nodes. Again, it is the same. If you want to maintain the documentation part and all, so the nodes can be maintained here. And the metadata is being used if this category component wants to use a particular format of data. Let's assume that it's going to use only JSON. So we can maintain by adding the metadata, it's going to add only the JSON, or if you want to add any Excel sheet, or you want to add any XML payload, so it will strictly align you to follow the XML pattern itself. So that's the metadata part here. I'm not going to use any more this. I'm just clicking on the general. So we are back to the actual screen of this category component, and we are going to use the default one. Just let me run the application. I am running the application, and it is going to deploy into Anypoint Studio in the runtime environment, which is called as ESB. It's going to deploy. Let's wait for a moment or for a while. So it's getting deployed into the runtime environment. All right, so it is deployed into the runtime environment, and you could see a screen on the screen. It is having a resource, and if you want to test the application, you can test it from here as well. So it is being, the screen is coming because we have implemented the API-led connectivity. So we have implemented the RAML designing and we have imported the RAML here in. So it has created the skeleton for us, and we are trying to test from here. If I am clicking on the post, it is sending a request to the application, and you could see that this is a request, and we got the response. The status is 200, and this is the response coming from the application which has been deployed. So all right, so let's get back to the application, and let's test it from the real-time scenario from the Postman. So this is the actual one. We can test it from here. You could see the URL has been here in the Postman, and I'm firing the request. So yeah, you can see that the response is coming immediately on the screen. Yes, I'm trying to click again. Yes, you can see this response coming on the screen, and it is collated one. So it is rates and two different vendors with two different rates and the currency. So based on the feasibility and based on the budget, you can adapt to any of the services provided by the vendors or the logistic services. And let's get back to the Anypoint Studio. The JSON which is coming is from the merge response. This is one of the data view transformer, and this is doing a job of converting the beautifying the response. If I would go back, if I would go back to the console or the merge response, you could see I'm beautifying the responses here. I'm preparing the responses in the JSON. I'm going to the console, and this I want to show you in a different way. This is the integration API page which is having in the XML format. So this is the section which was transforming the XML into JSON. So this I am trying to comment out, and I want to test it with the actual response which this gather is giving to the user rather than beautifying the response. So it's doing the hot deployment. All right, so it is hot deployed, and I'm going back to Postman and just I'm firing the same request. You could see the response is now coming in the XML base, and it is in the form of a collection-based response. So the response has been comma separated, and there are two different responses in one single response being sent by the application to the client. So that is the advantage of the scatter gather component, and it is much useful if you want to connect to all multiple system in one way or the concurrently, and you can get a single response with all collated into it. So that's the advantage of it. And so that's all about the session today. And you can reach out to me, Ashish Kumar Pandya, and the email address has been shown on the screen, mulesoft.adr@wishbox.com. And this is Ashish Kumar Pandya once again signing off. Thank you.